He's an architect and a Branford resident as well. So I think that's going to be a wonderful program. Today's program will be recorded. If you have questions, which I'm sure you will, you can put them in the chat, and we'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. It will be recorded today, so if you don't want to be seen or heard, you can mute or shut off your video. One other announcement, in the fall, we'll be taking a sabbatical, and we hope to open back up in the spring of next year with live programs at the Blackstone Library. So it's a great pleasure today to have Bernie Pelletier. He is a retired actuary, and he's vice president of PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy. And the way we got to know Bernie is that he served as the guiding hand or godfather for our Heat Smart program, which was a residential energy efficiency and heat pump and solar program that we ran last year. So I got to know Bernie a little bit. He's a great guy and a great speaker. And I really appreciate his joining us today. Bernie will talk about, what are you going to talk about?
I think it was
facing climate change with local initiatives. Thank you, Bernie. It's all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. And yeah, I have to say, I've been called a lot of things, but never the Godfather. So just to warn you all, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. That's the extent of my comedy right there. I was an actuary. So is that slide visible to folks? Great. As Dan was saying, the Branford Forum has been up and running for 15 years. That's quite a track record, and I'm very excited to be here and actually in the process of sort of refreshing these slides. I actually learned a lot. Things are moving and changing quite a bit. And as Dan said, I am a VP at People's Action for Clean Energy, which is a little nonprofit that is running a program called 100% CT. And it's been wonderful to engage on multiple projects with Branford. I would say that your town is one of the leaders in terms of civic engagement. And today we are talking about addressing climate change through local action. You'll notice I put here, I think this is something I would encourage you all to do, is start to look up the carbon dioxide parts per million and put it in your signature. So February 2022 versus February 2021, we're 419 versus 417. So we're up 2 parts per million despite the pandemic and all of those things. And you'll see in a minute, no matter what we do, it continues to go up. And that's what we're going to try to fix a little bit in this presentation. No pressure. So the context of this, of the remarks about local action, I took a screenshot of your Branford Clean Energy Plan, and you can see the blue bar here, and you can see 3 red bars and some green bars. We won't go into that other than what I would say is what you're looking at with the blue bar was the consumption that the entirety of Branford, so residents, businesses, and the municipal operations had in 2018. So it's 1,113 gigawatt hours of power. That's every drop of power that was consumed in Branford. And that's our baseline. And what the 3 red bars are really a combination of conservation across the community and electrification across the community. That's the big strategy to start to knock that blue bar down. When you take those 3 steps, you end up with a new load, which is about 60% of that blue bar. And then once you've knocked the load down, then you can start to go out and try to find renewable power to power Branford. So in other words, we're not going to try to power the way things are set today. We're going to try to reduce, and then we're going to try to produce. And today, what we're going to focus on mostly is going down beneath the level of Branford and going down to all of us on this call and all your fellow residents and citizens. So that's the context. And so this is a big problem. What you see here is something I'm sure all of you have seen at this point. It's the Keeling curve. This particular slice of it goes from the 50s, the mid 50s up till today almost. And you can see the rise, the inexorable rise in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I would urge you all to go to this website, www.co2.earth. I do this every day, and I have a cup of coffee and I go and I look. This is the daily. It's a day in arrears, but you can see what the CO2 level was today or the day before, as well as that same time last year. And it just it serves to focus your mind on the problem at hand. And I'm going to try to advance. So climate change is really a big and nasty problem. And the question I want to pose to us today is, are we nice and are we little? And this is climate change over here, this monster, and this is us on the call. We're kind of insignificant against this giant problem. When you think about what does local action mean, I like to talk about sort of think of it in concentric circles. And that's actually Dan Rabin right there in the middle of that circle there with the little cape on, depicting Dan and all of us as superheroes. We are ourselves, but we operate within our family, our community, our state, our nation, and our globe. And we'll focus mostly on ourself in that first circle, but we'll participate also in some of the bigger things. This idea of personal power, because this is really what this is about. This is what they would like to call a collective action problem. This is something that no single one of us is going to solve, but each of us, Gandhi has this little paradox, nothing that we do matters, but it's critical that we do it. And that's really kind of the paradoxical nature of us dealing with this. And I peeled off these two quotes because they're quite relevant. I think the first one is from Bill Gates. He says, most people, and certainly myself, overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. And for all of our sake, I hope that that's true because we're not getting it done in this year. And we have about, if you believe the International Panel on Climate Change, we have about a decade to get things under control. The little cartoon, which may be too small for you to see, is a fictional set of scientists in 2060 saying, at last, we have invented a machine that can fix climate change. And what that machine is, it's a time machine that takes us back to now when we still had time to fix things. So we still have time to fix things, but not very much. And this other thing, and I'm not Dr. Phil, I'm certainly not Dr. Ruth, so I'm not much of a psychologist, but personal power is this ability to influence people and events with or without formal authority. Some of us on this call have formal authority, and we should use it, but we all have personal power, and we should definitely use that. There's a lot of so I've been doing this, what I call it, energy work for going on 8 years now. And I hear a lot of excuses for inaction. A lot of people want to find a bad guy. If you can just get Frankenstein and get your pitchforks and keep them up in the windmill, everything will be good. That might be ExxonMobil. Some people have learned to be helpless. Some people will say, I'm too poor, I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't have time. A lot of people like my age I'm only staying in this house for 1 more year, so I don't want to do anything. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. This one, the next one is my favorite. It's going to affect my grandchildren. I used to think, oh, that's really caring. They care about their grandchildren. But then we don't do anything. And so the only logical conclusion is that nobody cares about their grandchildren. So I don't talk about grandchildren anymore. I have 4 that I deeply love. I talk about me. I talk about my 90-year-old father. It's going to affect us. It is affecting us. So it's got to be immediate. So I would ask us to take away from this, when you see yourself not acting, ask why, and really look to see what the barrier is, and just bring it to your consciousness. So I would say this, and we're going to get to some substance in a minute, but if you're breathing, you have power. And I was trying to think of 2 examples of people who might legitimately have an excuse not to exercise their power. And for anybody that's old enough to remember Lassie, remember poor Timmy periodically would fall down a well. Well, even though Timmy was in the well, he could still call Lassie. So we can, as long as you have a voice, you have a lot of personal power. And then Helen Keller, who was both blind and deaf. She lived to be 88, and she had an enormous impact on the world. So even though, as long as you're breathing, you've got some power. Okay. One of the problems, I think, when we talk about climate change is that carbon dioxide is a pretty intangible foe. It's a gas. It's gas. The chemists, I'm sure there's a chemist or a physical scientist on the call here. Gases have mass, they have weight, but most of us in our perception, unless we're filling up our propane tank or something like that, don't really feel it that way. So one of the things that I think we all have to do who are on this call, and I've struggled to do this, and I think I've almost got it, is really connect our intellect to our feelings. In other words, take the intangible and make it tangible. And I'm going to go through a couple of these exercises here. One, I'm going to show you the 20-pound exercise, and then I'm going to try to characterize our consumption in terms of on a different scale than we're used to thinking of it. We already talked about understanding our power, and then we're going to start talking about how do we fix this. So I'm going to make this problem tangible. And what I would say is that a gallon of gas weighs about 6.3 pounds. So the majority of us have at least one car, and the majority of them are gas-powered cars. We roll up to the gas station. It's painful these days because it's probably $4 or $5 a gallon. But the part that we don't physically experience putting gas in the tank. So if you put in 15 gallons of gas, you've put in almost 100 pounds of a fluid. You've never picked that up. So there's this idea of us producing carbon dioxide is very much tangible because we didn't even weigh the gas putting it in. We're sheltered from the physical act of putting gas in our car. And then the even more confusing thing is that when you burn it, it disappears. So in our minds, it's no longer there. It's vaporized. It doesn't weigh anything. But the reality is what we've done is we've taken all that carbon in that 6.3 pounds of gasoline, and 80% of that 6.3 pounds is carbon, 86%, I think. And we've combined it with 2 molecules of oxygen. So instead of making it lighter, instead of it making a gas that sort of doesn't weigh anything, every gallon that we burn produces 20 pounds of carbon dioxide. And if we were meeting in physical proximity to each other, I would bring in a gallon jug of water and just pass it around and say, okay, imagine that to be your gallon of gas. And then I would pass around 3 gallons of water and say, imagine that weight is how much carbon dioxide that you produce when you drive. So if you if you burn those 15 gallons of gas, you've produced 300 pounds of carbon dioxide. That's a lot. I'm an actuary, I know that. The other thing I want to do is take our consumption of energy, because right now we consume it as gasoline, which, as we said, we sort of sheltered from what's been there. We consume it as electricity. We consume it as natural gas. We consume it as fuel oil or propane. And each of those has a different measurement scheme. Each of them is a little bit intangible, gallons, 100 cubic feet, kilowatt hours. Who kind of knows what that means? So what I want to do is just frame that in terms of people. And so what all of us on this call, however many of us have joined today, we, on average, I think they say that women consume 2,000 and men consume 2,500 calories on average a day. My universal standard of measurement is the Snicker bar, which is my own little personal metric system. You can Google 860 calories is a kilowatt hour. So our daily caloric intake is about 2.6 kilowatt hours a day. So we're about 100 watt bulb, if you want to think of it that way, an old fashioned non-LED 100 watt bulb. 365 days a year. So that's 950 kilowatt hours per year. The analysis that the folks in Branford and Pace did as they put together that plan that we opened up the talk with would suggest that every man, woman, and child in Branford, on average, and this counts your businesses, consumes about 40,000 kilowatt hours a year. So if we were back in the days of Rome or the Middle Ages or something like that, you typically had access to one people power, namely you. If you were wealthy, you might have access to an ox, or you might have other people who had to do your bidding. One such person in popular mythology, if you will, is any of us that watched Downton Abbey. We're all familiar with Lord Grantham. And he had all these people that you see on the right there. He had Carson and he had Mrs. Hughes and he had all these people, and they would cook and they would clean and they would put their clothes on and comb their hair and they would take care of them. So he actually had control over, is that a dozen people? I think it's it's a little more than a dozen people there. So that's, and actually he had to share that with his wife and his two bratty kids. So he didn't really have that much, I guess. It wasn't just all for him. But if we take that calculation we did with the Snicker bars, and that would be us there, George Jetson, we have access to about 42 people, each of us. We command the power of 42 people. If you just take people and turn them into energy. So if you think about that, kind of no wonder we have kind of a bit of a problem. Now this is sort of this is Branford, this is the United States. You can go to India and you can go to other places, and they don't command that many energy servants like that we do here, but they command a lot more. Even the poorest person, anybody who's got access to electricity or a car, is commanding a lot of people. So part of the problem is that we are really commanding an awful lot of energy. So as we sort of alluded to at the beginning, the path forward really involves reducing what we consume. And there's really two major steps to that. One is just conservation. Don't waste as much. Use less where it's prudent. And then electrify. And electrify is really a very big one. And in simple terms, electric appliances are just more efficient, whether they're cars or motors or lawn equipment, whatever they are. They just don't obey the same laws of thermodynamics that heat engines, which is what all gas-powered and all fossil fuel-powered machines are. They can actually generate. You put a unit of energy in, you get a lot more energy back out in terms of what you want. So step one, reduce. Step two, having reduced our consumption, then let's seek to make the energy that we consume renewable. And part of today is, this is not an easy process. I'll be honest, when I retired from being an actuary in 2012, I had it in my head that I was going to become a net zero person. I'm not even close, and I've been banging at it pretty hard. It's a lot of work, but I'm still committed to it, and that matters a lot. And I, again, lapsing into Dr. Phil territory here, so forgive me for this, but I do think this is a good thing to tuck away in our subconscious. When you commit to something, you raise the sail of intention to the winds of opportunity. And I think perhaps if any of you have been shopping for a new house or a new car or Venetian blinds, if you're like me, and maybe you're not, all of a sudden the world is nothing but Venetian blinds. You see Venetian blinds everywhere. Or you're looking for a new car, you see cars everywhere. Well, if you commit to 100%, you're going to start to see opportunities to get to 100%. Dan has in his email possession something that he's going to inflict upon you at the end of this talk, and it's about a page. I think it's a one-page Word document, and I labeled it Branford Forum draft, but it is a little commitment sheet, and I label it draft because I expect, one, I probably have made some errors. Two, I fully expect that in the process of discussing what we're doing today, we'll have enhancements and changes to it. So, but there is this commitment, and this is what I would like you to put into your consciousness: electrify and increase our efficiency. I commit to moving my home and my transportation options to 100% renewable energy by taking immediate steps available to me. And this is important. Lots of things will not be immediately available to you, but we can plan to take additional steps as options become available. This would be a diversion, and I'll just go over to the edge of the rabbit hole and not go into it. But some of you down in Branford are working on a municipal program called Zero Over Time, which is for your municipal buildings. Every time Branford engages in an upgrade, you can view it as an opportunity. And so you can replace your air conditioning, for example, with what you have, or you can go to something better. If you put a roof on, you can put the same old roof that you had before, or you can put a roof on that will support solar. So this concept of zero over time, those additional steps as options become available, is crucial. And it goes back to that idea of doing this. We're not going to do it in 1 year, but we can do an awful lot over a decade's time. The other thing, right now, we're all on hopefully the tail end of a pandemic. We know what it means to be contagious, and contagion can be used for good, and it can be used for evil, and it can be used by a virus. This last sentence here: I further commit to sharing this pledge with my family and my friends and my local networks. I would ask all of you to digest this, get comfortable with it, argue with the pieces that you're not comfortable with, and then find a way to, if you have kids, you can just boss them around. You know how they listen to everything that you say. If you have friends, you can argue with them. Sometimes it helps to have it over a discussion over a glass of wine or something like that. But share it and try to spread it, because it has to be that. It has to go beyond just the people on this call. So step one would be to inventory all your fossil fuel equipment, plan ahead to replace, and get a home energy solutions audit. We're going to just talk a little bit about each of those. So inventory and plan. If you kind of have fun, if you just, not now because you have to pay absolute attention to every word that I say, but when you have a spare moment, think about how many cylinders you have. If you have a 6-cylinder car and you have a 1-cylinder gas machine and you have a leaf blower and you have a generator, maybe you have 2 cars, just think how many cylinders you have. And then say, someday I want to have no gas-powered cylinders in my ownership. So over on the right, you see a nice shiny RAV4. Over here, you see a Tesla. The Tesla has no cylinders. Even if you can't go all the way from a RAV4 to a Tesla, you should go to a RAV4 Prime. You should go to a plug-in hybrid. That'll get you 80% of where we need to go. So this is just a for instance, inventory and plan. You see here a nice furnace. One of the things Branford worked on to great effect was a heat pump campaign. Here again, you may not be able to get rid of your fossil fuel heating system entirely. In fact, at the moment, I really caution that you shouldn't do that unless you really know what you're doing. But getting a heat pump to help you with air conditioning that also heats will reduce the amount of fuel that you have to burn in that oil burner over there. And then we have El Toro, or I guess that's Honda over there. There's a growing movement for a variety of reasons to take lawn equipment and have that be electric powered as well. My wife and I take early morning walks, and one of my favorite sites is I've got a neighbor up the street who mows his grass at 8 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't disturb anybody because he's got an electric mower, and it does a good job. So, but this is, again, what you see on this page, and I'm leaving a lot of things off. I haven't talked about hot water heaters. I haven't talked about generators. Inventory them and make a plan. Perfection. So you're not going to get there overnight. Perfect is the enemy of the good. I didn't know this until I put this together. For Voltaire, I guess, said that. A year from now, you'll wish you had started today. I think that's really important. And then starting is the important thing. To go from nothing to something, I like the little graphic on the bottom. It says that's an infinite distance. Going from something to perfection is barely noticeable. So I think the thing to do is just get the ball rolling. Something that's within our power to do for all of us that live in residences, 1 to 4 units residences, and even those of us that live in apartments and condos, there's a version of this that you can do there, is to get something called a home energy efficiency audit. Branford did a fantastic job of this in the middle of the pandemic. Last I looked, there were well over 400 people had done this in your town. But as Dan pointed out to me pretty often, many people simply haven't done it. There's a lot of work to do. And why it's so important is most of our homes, not all, but most of our homes in Connecticut are just incredibly inefficient. Being an actuary, I'm entitled to have really boring hobbies. That comes with that territory. And one of my boring hobbies is to take pictures of roofs that have a little bit of snow, not a lot of snow, or a little bit of frost on them. And it's almost like thermal voyeurism, because you can essentially look through a roof by virtue of how the snow melts or doesn't melt on the roof. And I'm not going to take you through all these roofs. Dan, is this big enough for people to see? I think it is. I'll just take you to 2 of my favorites. Take this guy here, my cursor over this one. These little snow-covered or frost-covered strips are the overhang of the roof. So where there's no heated space underneath it, the snow doesn't melt. Of course, this area is over the heated space. So what's this individual doing? And this is a neighbor of mine. They're complaining about their heating bills, even as they're using all their fossil fuel to melt snow. That's a really unfortunate circumstance. These folks down here in the lower right have got a pretty good thing going on. You can see the snow is not melting anywhere over their area except over their kitchen right here. And I think they had work done and had the insulation taken out, or they just never had any insulation put in. But even now, and this is the first day of spring, but we'll still have a few frosty days. When you're out walking, don't do this while you're driving because you'll get in an accident. Check out people's roofs. It's interesting. So HESS, what do you get with HESS? I mean, this is one of the most powerful and actionable and doable steps that you can take. You get a no-cost energy assessment, and I take that back. In the days of Branford, it was no cost. Today, it's $50 if you make above a certain income level, and if you make below that income level, it's still a no cost. You get access to low-cost energy upgrades such as insulation and duct sealing. So insulation in particular, it's my favorite. It would fix those pictures that we looked at just now. Duct sealing, which is incredibly powerful. If you make all this energy in your furnace and then you pump it through leaky ducts, well, you're just wasting your time. And you can also get rebates on windows and doors. It's available to homeowners. That's easy. If you're a renter, you're also eligible for it. You do need to get landlord permission, but it's definitely doable. For those of us on the call that are, retired and don't have that much money, it's in a way the program is even better. It's free or no cost. There is a little bit of a process. You have to establish that your income is low. This financial chart down here is, they use the cutoff for being low income at 60% of the state median income guidelines. So for one person, it's $39,000. If you make below that, then you're eligible for this HESS-IE program. If by chance you happen to have 8 people living in your home with you, and you make under $103,000, then you're still low cost. So you can. But the point of me showing that to you is to say, anybody, rich or poor, or in between, can get this and should get this. And so we should continue to add to the work that Branford got going. That 400 should grow to 1,000, and eventually everybody should get this. There's another thing I would urge you all to do is take advantage of the existing programs. We just talked about HESS and HESS-IE. In the interest of time, I won't go into any depth here, but energy efficient appliances like dryers, like hot water heaters, like HVAC, like insulation, they're heavily incented. For instance, the insulation rebate is, I think, $1.70 a square foot. So if you get a quote for $2 a square foot for your insulation, as long as you've had a HESS audit in the last 3 years, they'll take $1.70 off of that. It's in the words of the Godfather, since you set me up for this, Dan, it's an offer you can't refuse. I'm not going to be mistaken for Marlon Brando, I know. Reduction of our consumption is the biggest thing that we can do. If you can remember back to those red bars, that they took our current energy load down. That's conservation and electrification. They took us down 60%. But we were left with some green bars, and we had to get, how do we get renewable power? So in the next 6 months, I'm quoting from that pledge, I will take all steps which have no upfront cost and which can save money. So you can sign up for community solar, except I think you can't. Technically you can, but I don't know of anywhere in Connecticut yet where you can do that. If anybody does know that, let's bring that up in the discussion area. But you can buy 100% renewable power for almost nothing. And you should also investigate solar on your roof. It's not everybody can do it, and the program has changed. It changed 1/1/2022, but it's still there and still intact. And you can check with several installers, and I'll give you a website that you can do some checking to see if it's viable for you. One thing I would call out as a challenge, and I've worked for some people in Branford and Guilford, this is a challenge across Connecticut, is if you're part of a homeowners association or if you live in a condo, you're going to face barriers. And that's something that I think over the next several years, I really hope that we can overcome, because about 20% of residents in Connecticut live in some form of HOA or condo association that really restricts their ability to get solar. And that's really unfortunate. And that's something that we have to work on. Just want to show you my electric bill from October of 2021. I participate in something called Community Energy. And what I do is I pay a couple pennies for every kilowatt hour that I use. In this particular month, it was $5.29 that I paid extra above and beyond what I normally had, quote, had to pay. In other words, this Eversource didn't make me do this. We can talk about this more, but a REC is a renewable energy credit. And basically, I bet you're all familiar with the idea of a swear jar. Every time you use a bad word, you throw a quarter or a dollar into a swear jar. This is sort of like an environmental swear jar. Every time you consume a unit of energy, if you buy a REC, which is what this program does, you're putting money and you're saying, I'm sorry I used that energy. Here's some money to help you somewhere in this vast system of ours. Develop a program so that we don't have to, this power doesn't have to come from fossil fuel sources. So boil that down, you can get Community Energy, and there's another one that will allow you to just automatically buy RECs. This is, I'm not promoting Community Energy. It's one of several people that do this, but it's a REC purchase program, and you can buy 50%. You don't have to buy 100%. You can buy 50% if the money gets to be a problem. You can also, and I think Dan will probably send out these slides. And if we can't send them out, I'll get this link to you somehow. But if you want to go on to the Energize CT's website and go to a direct supplier, somebody who will deliver to you energy, renewable energy, you have to go to this website and you have to go through this sort of process. And you see here it says renewable energy. This is a screenshot, so I can't click on it. Right now, all Connecticut is 30.5% renewable energy. That's sort of our what do you want to call it? Renewable portfolio standard requirement. But you can up that to 100%, paying a little bit more. In terms of getting solar on your own roof, there's many of you in Guilford and Branford that already have solar. And the best thing to do is just talk to a couple people who've done it and see who they used and how they like what they've got. So just talk to your neighbors. If you don't want to talk to your neighbors, I really can recommend this Energy Sage website. The web link is pretty easy to remember, and all they'll do is they'll say, tell us your name and address, tell us where you live. They'll find your house. You'll see a picture of your house. They'll tell you whether your roof is good or bad for solar. By the way, I think not all of you are even from Connecticut, I think. So I think, so far as I know, this is actually something that's available pretty much across the country. And what the nice thing about it is it will say, would you like to get 3 quotes from local installers? And if you say yes, it'll say, well, how shall we deliver those quotes to you? And probably the thing you don't want to do is get like 3 calls at dinner time all the time. So I would say, yeah, I prefer to have them emailed to me. So it's an easy thing. It's an easy thing to dip your toe in the water of, is solar good for me? It'll tell you if your roof is good or bad, roughly what it's going to produce, roughly what it's going to cost, and let me engage at a distance. So these people won't be in your face with some local installers. There's other ways to do it, but this is just one way. A lot of words here, but I'm going to summarize this slide to say that over the course of the year, if you're like my wife Nancy and I, not seldom does a year go by that you don't do something to your house. You get it painted, you get it sided, you get windows replaced, you get something fixed. You can synopsize this whole slide down to saying, while you're getting work done, look for an opportunity to improve your energy sort of footprint. So for example, if you're having electrical work done, well, get an outlet, get 240 circuit put in to your garage, so that when you do buy that electric car, you've got an EV charger right there. Go ahead and take the step while the electrician is already working in your basement. The biggest thing, if any of you are getting siding or roofing work done, add the insulation and address the air leakage then. I mean, the mess is being made. Take advantage of the mess. It's imagine that you're having your heart operated on. Your chest is open. You don't want the doctor to say, yeah, I see you have a problem over there, but we'll sew you back up. Then we'll cut you open again to fix that problem. You're on the table, you're open. Let's do what we can while the patient is on the table and open. Even painting. Go ahead, and if you have leaks around your windows, sometimes the windows themselves are leaky. Very often around the windows, they haven't been sealed. Just say, hey, while you're there, take the molding off, put some spray foam insulation in there, seal those babies up, make a big difference. Same thing in your basement if you're doing work down there. Insulate where you can. The two most important places to insulate in your home, I'll just use an analogy. If you go out on a cold day, you want to make sure you're wearing a hat, and you want to make sure that you have your socks on. All of our houses are subject to what's called the stack effect, which is to say we heat the air in our house in the wintertime. Hot air rises. Once it rises, it creates a little tiny vacuum down below. So as the hot air goes upstairs or goes up to the ceiling, creates a little vacuum. If your basement is not sealed properly, it'll pull the cold air in from your basement. And that's how you get a stack effect. The way to eliminate the stack effect is to seal it off up in your attic. So wear your hat, give your house a hat, if you will, and put some socks on your house. Seal off the sill plate so that you don't have air infiltration through your basement. But then the stack effect won't hurt you. So again, I'm repeating myself, but when you're doing something, look for opportunities to just do adjacent, easy to do stuff while they're in there. This one's a new one for me. I've just only recently started this, but I'm going to guess if you're attending this particular session, you have an interest in the environment. And I know I recognize a lot of the names here, and I know you have interest in the environment. We all vote. We vote in the ballot box, but we also vote every time we buy something and every time we make an investment. So it's becoming a real thing, and it's a really good thing, which is to align our money with our values. And when you invest, seek out this thing called ESG, and that's environmental, social, governance choices. And a lot of funds now will have ESG versions of them. And in fact, if sheer altruism is not enough for you, oftentimes the ESG funds are superior earners, because a lot of these fossil fuel laden firms are really not that well run and are not that good investments. So this would be a topic maybe for another time, and probably you want like an investment advisor or something like that. But there's a whole bunch of ways that an ESG fund can be put together. What probably comes to all of your minds, and it came to my mind, is I'm going to avoid things. I'm going to avoid, for example, ExxonMobil, or I'm going to avoid the Koch brothers. I guess they're down to one brother, Koch Industries. Okay, I'm going to avoid gun manufacturers. That's part of it. But there's really a positive side of it too. So when you look at who has, look over here in social, who has good employee engagement, who does work in their community, who stands up for human rights, who has labor standards. So it can be positive and it can be negative. Bear with me one second. So that, in general terms, align your money and your heart. This is a lot of polysyllabic words here, but internalize your externalities. So I'm sure there's an economist or two on the line today. One of the problems with our market system is something like climate change is an externality. The consequences of our actions falls on somebody other than ourselves, and the market economy doesn't respond to those. For those of us on this call, we know that carbon causes an impact. And so there are some ways for us when we take a plane, and by the way, full disclosure, my family and I flew to Florida a month ago, and we got COVID too. So I guess in a way, the universe punished us for that. But you can go to this website, and there's many of these types of websites, but you can buy travel offsets. So if you're traveling by air, driving, even if you're staying somewhere, taking a cruise, which is something I don't think I'm going to do, you can offset your air travel. So, and I don't think this is visible to you, but hypothetically, if you're taking a 7 to 9 hour flight, they estimate for you that you are summoning or creating 1.32 tons of CO2. They've got a cost over here of $14.62 per US per ton, and so that 1.3 tons you can put into the environmental swear jar, $19, and that'll go to purchase RECs, and those RECs will go to serve some purpose to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide. It might be planting trees, grasslands, preserving grasslands, a project. It goes somewhere. So you don't have to do this particular one, but something like it is a good thing to do. It also makes you very conscious of the amount of carbon that you're producing when you engage in these activities. I attribute this to you. You have, I think your Clean Energy Commission leader is a passionate advocate for trees. Clean up your mess. So if you followed the first part of this presentation, every gallon of gas I burn, I create 20 pounds of carbon dioxide. It floats up in the air and it's invisible, so you don't see it. But if I drove through your town and I dumped 20 pounds of trash on the street, you would definitely see it. One way to clean up your mess is to preserve, protect, and plant trees. A mature tree can absorb about 48 pounds of carbon a year. So that's every time you burn 2.5 gallons of gas, a single tree will sort of absolve you of that sin. That's my Catholic upbringing speaking there. An acre of forest can take care of a car's annual mileage. Now, to be clear, if you have to plant a new forest to make up for additional things. There's also a lot of, it's not a panacea. So it matters what kind of, and I'm not going to go into this, but I cut and pasted an article from the New York Times here that basically says you have to plant the right tree. You can't plant some invasive tree. You can't plant a tree that isn't compatible with the ecosystem that you're putting it into. But across the country, across the world, in fact, people are starting to plant a lot of trees. And according to this New York Times article, billions of trees have been planted around the world. So clean up your mess, plant a tree. Okay, pretty much all that prior discussion was about you. Just going to touch ever so lightly on the groups that are around you, where you are an influencer, where you're a participant. Help your kids. One of the mythologies I think we have is that it all, you see Greta Thunberg and you see these young environmental heroes, and you say, oh, I'm glad they're doing it. Well, we shouldn't put it all on them. We can't put it all on them. In fact, using my own children as an example, they're so busy that they don't really have time. I know more about some of this stuff than they do. Help them. Or conversely, for a change, ask them for help. So inform them, offer your time, offer to help them with a car. So whatever the delta is between, say, a gas car and a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid or a battery electric, if you have the means, say, go ahead and get this car. I'll make up the difference if you can do that. Lead by your own example. And just like when Timmy fell down the well, you could still call for Lassie. We should do the same. We should just talk about it. Talk about it a lot. Find a way to talk about it. And I'm talking about climate change. And find a way that you don't turn people off. And that's really hard to do. Faith communities. I call faith communities in Connecticut, and I think everywhere, I call them the sleeping giant, because most of them have not been super active. Some individual congregations, temples, synagogues, mosques are stellar counterexamples to that, but they have great potential. If you look at the liturgy and the writings of most faith communities, they do have a care of creation ministry. Some, like in the Catholic faith, Pope Francis has written a wonderful scientific treatise, a papal encyclical called Laudato Si, Care of Our Common Home. I know that the Universalists, I was quickly able to find, they have a green sanctuary program. I commend to all of you, sorry about that, an interfaith group called IREJN, Inter-Religious Eco-Justice Network. All you have to do is put that in to a Google search and it will take you there. They try to bring in people from all faiths, but if you're active in a faith community, see if you can't get them involved in this good work, environmental work. And this is you broadening your circle and trying to influence things around you. PACE, my group really operates within Connecticut in the 169 towns and cities of our state. And as we said, Branford is a really great example. You see before you, I just screenshot your cover page of your energy plan. This is a great piece of work, and it's our goal at PACE to get the other 168 towns and cities to do what you've done in Branford. Have a plan. Get your community to commit to 100% and have a plan to get there. I think your plan is, from memory, to get you to 100% renewable by 2040. You have some level of buy-in from your town officials and from at least a dedicated core of people. So please do that. Community programs. We talked about, and I think Dan alluded to this, the Heat Smart program in Branford. This was the first. You were really the icebreaker for the Heat Smart program. I think you're well past 400. The 400 of your neighbors have participated. One of the great things about what Branford did is they influenced their neighboring community of Guilford. So, and actually, the leader of your clean energy committee is Shirley McCarthy. She was instrumental in sort of contacting her counterpart in Guilford and saying, "Hey, we just did this. You ought to do it too." So you can do stuff in your community, and using that as a base, you can try to influence the communities around you. And that's really expanding then in concentric circles from you your community, to the communities around you, really expanding your power. I'm not going to talk very much at all really about state and federal, international, or really even interplanetary stuff. Regarding the interplanetary stuff, I find if you take the aluminum foil hat off, you can hear all sorts of things from other planets, but that's another topic. I will say this about how we think about the federal level and the higher levels. If you go back to President, I guess, 44, you'll recall that briefly, ever so briefly, like a stone skipping on a pond, we were in the Paris Climate Accord. And I remember thinking, oh, this is great. At last, we're committed, we're going to do something. And sort of like to me anyway, a slow motion train wreck, we pulled out of that. And I said, I can't control. I have some influence, but I have not that much influence. I can't control what happens up there. I want stuff to happen up there. Something like, for example, the carbon fee and dividend program. It's a great program that if it ever came to pass at the federal level, would be a game changer. It would make things much easier and much faster. And I have hopes for it. I'm not giving up on it. But I stay away from what I call the baby bird model of sort of how we think about our federal government, which is, think about a baby bird. It sits there with its mouth open in the nest, and it waits for the answer to come down from on high. It's good if you're a baby bird, but I don't think it's the way we should go as climate activists. What I prefer is sort of the model that I made up on the right, which is that we should work as hard as we can down here so that we become effective advocates and supporters and examples for our federal and state counterparts. So I view us as putting a hand up so that we can reach the hand up that is coming down. Much more active participatory view of sort of power from on high. I'm not waiting anymore for a savior. I'm hoping for a savior, but I'm not waiting for it. Again, and I think this, forgive me, this is maybe the third or fourth time I mentioned about this, but whether it's Timmy in the well, or we're just talking about it with our kids or our family, talking about it is really, really important. I screenshot a webinar poster for Catherine Hayhoe. She's a really interesting person. I can't recommend her highly enough. She's both a climate scientist and an evangelical Christian. And she's really become expert at how to talk about climate change. She would say, if you do nothing else, you should talk about it, because that's taking your influence and expanding it beyond you to other people. And it can't be simply, hey, you do this, because that won't work. It takes a lot of work to talk about it effectively. This is a shameless promotion for PACE, but one of the things that we do on the PACE website, which is the website address that we've got up there, we've got a calendar up there, and you can sign up for that calendar. When you go to the website, sign up for the calendar, and it will do two things. If those of you that use an electronic calendar, it will push events to your calendar. So if there's an event in a town or a city, or DEEP is doing something, you'll see it on your calendar. And so it pushes events out to your calendar. Conversely, and I should have done it for this event, for the Branford Forum, and I didn't, but I could have. You can take an event that you're trying to publicize and you can get it posted on the PACE website, and it'll push it out to several thousand people. So the heading of this is we work like the Dickens as individuals, and then we begin to connect with each other in all sorts of ways, and become a credible, coherent force to be reckoned with. One of the things that Dan is going to send out to you is the Green Energy News. It's put out by PACE and the Eastern Connecticut Green Action Group, curated by a great fellow named Peter Millman. It's 5 or 6 articles a week. It's easy to read and digest. It also features local activities. So it could be something about DEEP is having like, for example, DEEP is going to talk about hydrogen. You'll see it listed there. It's also something, if you're having an event, you can get it published in the Green Energy News. Dan's going to send you the latest edition of it. On it is a register button. You can sign up and get it. Our hope is to get a lot more people there, so we'll have a lot more influence. Also, to be perfectly clear, it's through constant contact. If you say, I don't want to get this anymore, all you have to do is unsubscribe, and we don't sell your name. So sign up for the PACE calendar, sign up for the Green Energy News. The idea is we're going to become a force to be reckoned with, so that, unlike one of the opening slides there where we had that horrible monster facing only a few of us, our devout hope is that we'll become not an angry mob. It's all too easy and all too ineffectual to become an angry mob. We've seen enough of those, but we've become an effective, smart, focused group. And you can see the monster is still there. He's over in the lower left corner, but there's a lot more of us now, and he doesn't look so big by comparison when all of us are connected and working in not lockstep, but working in the same direction and supporting each other. And one of my favorite lines, and I'm guessing that Barack Obama stole this from somebody, but I'm stealing it from Barack Obama, and I urge you to steal it, is we are the people that we have been waiting for. And with that, I'll leave it on that.
Thank you so much, Bernie. That was it was great, and I first of all, I appreciate your appellation of superhero. I know I think of myself that way, and it's refreshing to know that somebody else does as well. I think your emphasis on the art of communication is extremely important. When people are concerned about climate change and they know someone well, there are sort of 2 scenarios. One is the other person is a sympathetic sort, and you end up saying, well, yeah, it's terrible, and what can we do? Or the other person is either doesn't believe in climate change or feels helpless, and then it's something that's actually difficult to talk about. And I think we all have to get over that hurdle. And Catherine Hayhoe is wonderful. She has a very engaging style, and thank you for bringing her up. Do you have any hints on how to really open that discussion with people who your neighbors or family? It seems that Americans are, if I could generalize, are really bad about doing stuff when they're not threatened or it doesn't seem like an emergency, and we're really good at doing stuff when it's like Pearl Harbor and we really have to pull together. And how do we kind of take climate change over that threshold so that people are really concerned about it without making them feel powerless and without losing all of our friends? Could you say something about that, Bernie?
Well, you're talking to a guy who has very few friends left, so I no. That's a really important question, and in all candor, I think I have some glimmers, but I certainly do not have the entirety of an answer. I see Henry Auer did sort of expand and give the citation for Catherine Hayhoe's book, which I really do recommend. One thing I would urge is, I think going mano a mano, fact to fact, is not the way to go. I found it much more, I would say a lot of people who either don't believe or don't care, if I start spewing facts at them, you can almost just see the eyes glaze. And so I ask questions, and you know, you and I know on a shoreline, like there's certain broad hints, like you've had a number of tornadoes, you've had a number of sort of near catastrophic rainfalls. I think it's worthwhile just saying, did you think that was a little odd? And seeing if you can't engage them in a manifestation of it. I think, and I do not want to cheapen what's going on in Ukraine by bringing in as a point of argumentation, but I think it's become evident that dependence on fossil fuel has international repercussions, and I think you can find areas that are likely sort of bridge crossers, like independence and autonomy, and say, wouldn't it be, well, what do you think? How does it feel to have to buy, like, I was even surprised, to be honest with you, that some amount of our money, of our oil came from Russia. That I mean, I think you could say, did that bother you? It surprised me. What can we do to get out of, that? So I would, my two answers are, try to find things that are evident and use them as building blocks, and ask more questions, and ask questions. Don't start off with a bunch of declarative fact-based sentences. And I'll bet you there's a lot of people on here who are better at this than an old ex-actuary. So don't hold back. And
there's a discussion in the chat about vehicles idling, and Aaron Good, thank you for that, for your comment and the link there. I would say to Pam that there are people in town who are concerned with that, and our colleagues in Wilton actually did a program to try to address idling. From my standpoint, it's just stupid, because you're wasting gas, and especially in moderate temperatures, you're not from it. But there are ways to approach drivers who are idling, and there are ways to not approach drivers who are idling. It's very similar to this discussion about talking about climate change. But anyway, Pam, if you're interested in that issue, I would encourage you to come to the Clean Energy Committee on March 28th at the police station at 4 o'clock and introduce yourself. And I think you'll find some willing ears and helping hands, and we can talk about working on that in terms of a campaign in town. So yes, it's a problem. Yes, we appreciate your interest in that.
part of, if I could take that point, Dan, part of this is what's accepted as the law is one thing, and whether you're very stretched and stressed police force can devote time to enforcing that amongst all the other things they do is a question. But what you can make to be acceptable behavior amongst your neighbors, that's another way to go at it. So law is powerful, but sort of what's normal, what's your normal culture is even more powerful.
Judy, you entered a comment about buying solar from the electric company. Would you like to say a few words about your experience with that? Was it hard or easy to get into it? Was there any interruption in service? Is it dependable, et cetera? So can you describe your experience?
We just have the option. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and we had the option to buy all of anything up to all of our electricity from solar through the electric company, because as you know, there's abundant sun here, but not everybody wants to or can put solar on their roof. And we felt that it would be better, more cost effective, and we didn't want to put solar on our particular roof. And so we just buy it from this electric company, no interruptions, no problems. It's really very painless once you get used to it. And we try to keep the cost down by having a cost differential. They have a program where the most expensive times of day, we try to use the least amount of energy and turn we use our automatic thermostats to ramp up an hour before that expensive time comes, and then we turn it down and try not to use any electricity at all other than what we have to. So it's a great deal if you have it locally and you can do it and you can afford it.
So those three slides I showed way back, you can do something like that. We don't, in Eversource territory, we do not have time of use sort of tariff structure. I think someday we will. But you can buy renewable power, or you can buy RECs, either which way, and do that piece of what you've done out there. And what you're doing by monitoring your use, and one of the reasons electricity is expensive is we make it, we create demand, and then we satisfy that demand. And so you can have a peak demand, and it can, sometimes you have to get like a peaking power plant to do that. It might only run a couple days a year. It's only brought into service when we have that peak demand. What you're talking about is actually changing that model so that we modify not only our generation, but we also modify our demand. So we smooth out our demand. We don't need those really expensive peaking options. And a sizable percentage of our expense goes to supporting both energy and capacity of generating assets that don't get used very much at all. And so it's much more cost effective to do what you guys are doing out there.
I'd make one quick comment about the homeowners association issue. We've certainly run into that where some condo owners want to put solar on their roof. Sharon Hutner came up with an interesting approach to that, and that is to look at the common areas, the clubhouse or the meeting room, whatever it is, and approach that as a small business that can make improvements. And since they are the homeowners association, they're likely to get their own permission to do a project like that. So that's sort of a foot in the door. It's not the same as putting solar on all the units, but it's a way to get people familiar with the solar energy and the cost savings involved. So it might not be totally satisfactory, but I think it's a great start. Sharon, do you have anything to add about that process? She's not. Well, Susan Glantz, why don't you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you. You mentioned earlier about community energy as being I forget what you called it, having units of sort of compensation for energy usage, if I understand that correctly. I had signed up for community energy quite a number of years ago. And then a few years back, I signed up for energy rewards. Are you familiar with them? And it's much more expensive. And I don't know, is it directly supplying me the energy? And do I still need energy rewards? I'm community energy, I'm paying both.
I don't know what energy rewards is, so I'd be happy to follow up on your electric bill. Let me just flash up my electric bill there.
Yeah, for my suppliers, I have two.
You have two of them.
Yeah, I have two. I have community energy and I have energy rewards, which I believe is a Connecticut program.
I'm gonna guess, I can do a little research on that. I'm gonna guess you don't need them both.
Yeah,
If you want to take blot out your account number and address and all that stuff, and maybe just take a picture of your bill and send it to you, or send it to Dan. He can send it to me, and I'll do a little checking around.
okay, maybe there's somebody in the audience that might know about energy rewards as a supplier. I don't know. Thank you. I just, yeah, I'm paying for both, and I suspect I don't need both.
Yeah, you got me curious. I will look up energy rewards.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can make that connection. So Susan, if you want to send it to me, I can forward it to Bernie, no problem.
Okay.
There was Aaron Good also made a comment about two right to charge bills currently at the CT state legislature. There is stuff going on in Hartford, and if anybody's interested in state level advocacy,
Did you get, I think Dan got stuck. But I think he was going to say we should work together on supporting these sorts of bills in the state legislature. This particular legislative session is really a short one. I think it ends in early May. But Aaron, I think if you want to circulate that again to Dan, I think we could probably sign on in support of it and get to our legislators. If it's all, I don't know if you know, has it gotten out of committee or not? Am I still audible to you guys? I know Dan looks like he's stuck. Okay, good. So I think we should follow up on Aaron Good's question about or comment about the different bill right to charge bills that are before the legislature, and maybe we can provide some support. I also see Lorena has a comment about Tweed Airport. One thing that I would recommend to you is that NOAA, NOAA.gov, I think, has a sea rise level viewer, and essentially it's got a map of New Haven or East Haven in this case, anywhere in the United States actually, and it will show you what a foot. Bear with me. This is Dan. Hey Dan.
I lost my internet connection, so if you don't mind, thank yourself.
Okay.
I think that was all of the questions.
Very
Thank
good.
you so much, Bernie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Bye. That was Dan. He said he couldn't take any more, or actually his internet broke down, so or the dog ate his homework. I'm not sure what, but so he said we could wrap up the questions, and then I was to thank myself, so I can do all that. But I would again, Lorraine, I can follow up with you. The Sea Rise viewer is something we all ought to look at, especially you, on most of you being on the shore, to see what a foot of sea rise level does by itself, and then couple that with tidal surge, it's actually quite startling in some cases. For example, I think parts of West Haven, or I think that's by memory, we really should be very careful. And I think the Tweed Airport expansion sounds like it's another one of those. And Lorena, you also mentioned you feel like in your town, when you want to plant a tree or you want to talk solar, you're considered to be a nut or somebody who's rocking the boat. You get this a lot, especially when people, political stuff gets in the way. I would say be very pragmatic. So one, look for examples of solar in adjacent towns. In our town, we have 16 schools and we have solar on 12 of them. And in every case, it's a financial win. So as I used to say, money talks, nobody walks. That's a very pragmatic example. Bus stops, etc. I think look for other examples in towns. And I'll just say one other thing. Whether you believe in Build Back Better or the American Rescue Plan or not, it's my belief that very shortly substantial amounts of money are going to flow down to the state level. You might say to your town, you can stand on principle and say you're not going to accept those dollars to rebuild that bus stop, but why? This is a chance to, you don't want West Hartford to get that money, do you? So I think it's a combination of being practical. We towns you should be able to find examples of people who will support such initiatives. And I think we all should be on the lookout for, I'll say, shovel-ready projects that we can take money that's going to come down and put it to good use. Okay. Did I leave any question? At least I know I didn't answer them, but did I leave them? I tried to answer them. If anybody has a last question, fire away. Okay. Well, folks, it's been great talking with you. Thank you very much. Please go out there and influence your friends and convert your enemies and make this happen. There's only so many shopping days left.
Thank you so much, Bernie. Appreciate it.
All right. Good night and thank you all. Good afternoon and thank you all. Thank you, Henry.
Great job, Bernie.